Wolf compares me to her friend's husband, develops a close relationship with him, and disregards my concerns, leaving me unsure of what to do. My wife Alice and I have been together for 9 years, married for 7. Prior to getting married, during a discussion we had about me being unhappy with her partying nature, Alice told me, don't take this the wrong way, but Chase, then boyfriend, now husband of Alice's former roommate Dina, would be a better partner for me. This was a real gut punch in lots of ways. I guess because Chase would stay out late drinking and partying most nights of the week, Alice thought that if her and Chase were a couple he would be okay with her also staying out late drinking and partying most nights of the week. Well, about 10 months ago Chase approached Alice about doing sales consulting for his business. Alice already has her own business and does better than she ever did before, so the opportunity from Chase wasn't something we need to keep the lights on, but every extra bit helps. I expressed my initial concerns to Alice. She tried to reassure me in different ways, like she did when she had first said he'd be a better partner for her. Chase was a bro, parties too much, too loud, etc. All the while I know Chase and I are different people. I'm never going to be like Chase, and I don't care because I'm happy with myself, but it still eats me up when I think about the person I was set to marry, now married with amazing kids, compared me to someone that I would ordinarily feel indifferent towards and now don't care for. For some added background on Chase and Dina, they started dating after Alice and Dina wanted to settle down like us and met Chase through an app. He was non-exclusive with Dina and only hooking up, eventually giving her a mild but untreatable STD that caused Dina to become somewhat depressed since she'd want to disclose that to any potential partners for the rest of her life. After a few months, Dina decided that instead of trying to date someone new and accepting, she was going to give Chase everything he wanted and would overlook all his previous sketchiness and all of his partying so they could have a future together. Alice knew all this, and knew Dina was sad and depressed and ultimately gave up some of her standards, all because this guy Chase gave her an STD. And then Alice turning around and saying that's the better partner for her seemed ludicrous and completely insensitive. Alice and I worked through it back then, and one of the biggest reasons I was able to forgive her was because Alice and Chase had minimal interaction the 2 or 3 times a year we saw him and Dina, and Alice and I planned on moving closer to family so that there would be even further distance. Enter the opportunity mentioned above. I only catch the occasional correspondence between Alice and Chase through a shared business email Alice has where I can help out for business filings and taxes, but it's friendly in nature, much more friendly than I've ever messaged people since meeting Alice. Alice then deletes only correspondence from Chase from the inbox. Alice talks to Chase about 20 times more than she talks to Dina these days, and there's lots of laughing and joking around. Chase is sending Alice pics of the cool outings he does since he owns his business. Chase calls on the occasional weekend or after hours, and Alice says to me that he should respect her off time, and then after a few minutes go by she calls him back. Chase sends the occasional message excusing his partying for his messages having typos. There's the accidental autocorrect where Alice suggests we go visit Dina and Chase. There's the couple times spooning where Alice has brought Chase up. There's the time when mentioning Dina's b-day, and because there's more than one friend named Dina, Alice clarifies it's the one married to Chase, not Dina's last name, not her old roommate. There's Alice mentioning our kids and Dina and Chase's kids are about the same age and we should visit them, halfway across the country, sometime soon. There's Alice acting sad when she hears from Chase that Dina is pregnant again. Because Alice and my kids have birthdays close together, there's Chase asking what we've been doing in that same month of the year leading up to our kids' births. All this stuff adds up to give me the ick. I've tried reasoning with Alice about the sales she's making and sending 50% to Chase that she could have all of if she started her own similar business. I've tried reasoning that Alice's own business is growing and will get much busier and more lucrative later this year and carry into the next. I've tried asking Alice to keep her relationship professional with Chase and she gets defensive, like it's okay for her to now develop a friendship with this guy, her former roommate's husband, the better partner. Then she'll act all angry and animated and say she's emailing Chase right now to stop working with him. I tell Alice all I want is for her to have appropriate boundaries with the guy, and to be as transparent as she can. That gets her acting normal for a few days, and then it seems to start again. I'm not sure exactly what else I'm supposed to say or do to have Alice act differently towards Chase, and sometimes I think all I can do is focus on me and the kids and my work. No threats or any of that, just the truth to her. This is not acceptable for you, so that should draw the line. Update 1. Only got a single response to my original post and there's a link below. Updating mostly to get my thoughts out. I sat with everything for a bit, and then this Monday things got very heated. Alice makes her own hours since she has a growing WFH business all on her own, and then was doing the consulting with Chase as well. Late Monday morning, Alice came back from the gym and got into a nice dress, and I asked her what meetings she had since she typically only did that for big meetings with interesting people. She also has meetings in the clothes she rolled out of bed in for unimportant meetings, so being dressed up is an event. Unbeknownst to me, this was triggering to Alice as a woman. A few times over the last couple months, Alice would put on makeup or lipstick or a nice dress and me asking her what for was something she very much didn't like, but also never communicated to me. For context, on average Alice gets dressed up and puts on makeup maybe once a week. More context, I also WFH doing very boring stuff, so I'm very interested in her meetings with cool people and cool products since I really don't have much else going on. Well, That night as I'm cooking, Alice mentioned something being my girlfriend, which I told her I didn't find it funny and went back to cooking. Humor is subjective and I just wasn't in the mood. She wanted me to tell her what was wrong, that she had an idea what was wrong, and then she started talking loudly that it was just a joke and yelling at me, asking her questions when she gets dressed up and puts makeup on about who she's meeting with, virtually, or where she's going, comes across as searching for something and she didn't like it. Okay, fair enough. I told her I wouldn't be searching if she would be more open and communicative with me. We delayed the full heated conversation until later when the kids were in bed. I had told her that from the very beginning that I was uncomfortable with her working with Chase, but that we could definitely use the money, and so long as she could make me comfortable with the situation I was on board. I thought that was a mature, non-controlling way that would go a long ways towards asking Alice to give me reassurance. Alice has not made me comfortable with the situation. I also didn't expect their work to last as long as it had. I expected a few months, and due to changing demands it was looking like it might go on for 2 years. The argument was wide-ranging and Alice was most mad about me searching, and I mentioned so many times in so many ways I'd asked her to over-communicate, which I should have specified to her I wanted her to primarily over-communicate her dealings with Chase. She wouldn't tell me hardly anything about their communication. So I'd ask and she'd tell me what was going on with the situation, but never their communication. By me asking, she said that she took it that I was okay with everything, but I had to ask because she wasn't telling me anything. Like I mentioned from the start, I asked that she make me comfortable with it and she never did. I'd known that Chase and Alice were on friendly terms, overhearing the occasional phone call and meeting, joking around about stuff, and weekend plans. They'd share some pics of the kids doing stuff, and Chase would mention the cool things he's doing since he also owns his own business and makes his own hours. I'd asked Alice if she was now friends with Chase, was always Dina's husband before, and she said so many times that she's a friendly person and that's why she's good at her job. So that was a deflection. I then asked how often she's chatting and communicating with Chase, and then how often she's communicating with Dina. Very little communication with Dina, maybe 5% or 10% of her interaction with Chase. I said it sounds like she's becoming friends with the person she told me would be a better partner for her, more so than her actual friend. Alice tried some revisionary history by saying she meant Chase would be a better boyfriend and someone to party with, and that I'd be a better husband and life partner. Alice had said that before, but it was a while later when we were in couples therapy after I guess she reflected on how bad and hurtful what she said was. She thought that would make me feel better then, and I told her at that time it didn't, and she thought it would make me feel better now, and I told it still didn't. I mentioned to Alice that she wasn't setting boundaries with Chase, like when she'll answer calls, texts, messages, emails, etc. occasionally at night on the weekends. One example, Alice and Chase were supposed to get an update from a client Friday evening, which is already kind of imposing. Alice showed, Chase and the client didn't. The next day Chase calls Alice when our family was hanging out having a fun time, and Alice said she wouldn't answer it since it's not respectful of her time. But then 5 minutes later Alice said she's really curious what's going on, so she leaves family time to go call Chase. I asked her 3 or 4 times realistically, how many couples out of 10 or out of 100 did she truly think would still be together if another partner said what Alice said to me? Alice never answered and instead deflected by saying, well, why did you forgive me? Alice told me how she disliked Chase and the type of person he is, even though she suggested visiting Dina and Chase before. I told Alice, don't tell me that you don't like him, show me. Alice said she's so frazzled, which I often reply why she overcommits us all to so many activities, and that's why she doesn't over-communicate with me. I asked, with the increase in her main business and the busy season coming up, how she expected to deal with it all. She said she didn't know. I said she could stop consulting. Alice said she'd have to stop consulting since her business is about to get crazy, so she'll end her consulting in a couple months. That's where we're at now. I know outside of this, Alice and I are in a decent but not great place. I'm hopeful, but then in another post I'd read a comment saying, if your spouse says I am uncomfortable with this and you shrug and continue to do it, your marriage is over, and that really hit me. I hope that's not the case. Now on to second story. Cousin pressures me to tattoo him on his wedding day, but I feel uncomfortable and unprepared. Now my family is angry at me. I am a tattoo artist. I've done an apprenticeship the first year of tattooing. I work as a tattoo artist for 4 years now, and I opened a studio recently. Me and my family are invited to a wedding that is taking place in another state. My cousin is marrying and we got the invitation a few months ago. Time has moved forward and now the wedding is in a week already. Out of the blue my cousin, let's call him Matt, texted me with something along the lines of, you're gonna tattoo me on my wedding day. I was a bit confused as I never even thought of bringing my equipment, since I also didn't plan a guest spot or anything. Guest spot is a tattoo artist working at another studio for a few days or weeks, mostly in a different area to grow the clientele. I jokingly asked if he has a machine, as I still hoped that he wasn't serious. He then just asked if I don't have one, and that one machine wouldn't take up that much space to take with. I replied that I didn't plan on bringing my equipment, that in fact contains more than just a machine, color, hygiene stuff, stencil, that's the purple stuff you put on the skin to then trace the tattoo with actual needles, etc., and that I'm not prepared to tattoo at a wedding of which I don't know anything about, layout of the location, is it inside/outside, and so on. He then said that he had planned on this and that it would mean a lot to him to both get a tattoo on his wedding day and that I'd be the one to tattoo him. Remember that this is the first time I'm hearing this. I again tried to explain that I don't feel comfortable with that and that it's quite short notice as I work until me and my brother fly over to attend the wedding and a tattoo needs to be designed first, right? He saw my message but didn't reply anymore. This morning my mother called and she was furious. She asked why I couldn't pull my shit together and just tattoo Matt. I told her what I've previously told Matt as well, but she didn't want to hear it. She just said it would mean a lot to her and Matt's family if I do that and that it could be my wedding gift. Then she hung up. I talked to my brother about it and he just shrugged it off and said it would be nice of you, though I'm unsure what to do now. As I said, I'm not really comfortable with the whole situation, especially because I've never been guest spotting, so I never had to travel, let alone get on a plane with my equipment. But is that just selfish? I mean, it would mean a lot to apparently everyone and I'm just saying no? Edit. 1. I do have an actual wedding gift already, as they sent out a wish list with their invitations. There was a point that said artwork, because they recently moved into a bigger house and apparently they want random artwork to decorate. I oil painted them a painting I spent several days on, so I also don't plan to give him a voucher as a gift. 2. Maddie doesn't have any tattoos as far as I know. 3. I don't know what my mom's problem is with all of this. I think she just wants to keep the peace. Update 1. So the last hours have been a lot. First I called my mom and wow, she asked me again, this time very friendly, if I want to tattoo Maddie at his wedding, and again I said no, with all the reasons I've previously given her plus some of the very good points you guys had. Before she could say anything else, I added that I felt like she wouldn't take me and tattooing seriously. She didn't say anything for a bit until she tried to explain that she really thought it wasn't a big deal. I told her again that it is and that my mom of all the people should know how my job works. She agreed and apologized profusely. I then asked her if she'd like to attend and watch me work on a client's appointment, and to my surprise she said yes. Mom is tagging along tomorrow. Now to Maddie, or rather his bride. I finally got hold of the bride, let's say her name is Becky, and asked her about the request her fiancé confronted me with. She seemed surprised, as she apparently had heard from my aunt that I made them something for their new house. She assumed it would be a painting since I'm the artist of the family and it's known that I also paint. I confirmed that, but that Maddie has come forward with this out of the blue and that it's not a good idea for many reasons. She agreed with me immediately. I think she does have tattoos. She thanked me for telling her as no one else did. Becky seemed really mad, but she seemed to pull herself together. I would have lost it. I'm assuming Becky confronted Matt after our call, because only 3 to 4 hours later I checked the family group chat and there was a message from Becky. There will be no ceremony on the 13th as Matt and I decided we aren't getting married. Matt and I have things to figure out, so please text or call us tomorrow if you have questions. For the rest of the day we'll be on flight mode. After dinner Becky called me and apologized for Matt again. She said it was a stupid idea of his and that he just thought it would be cool. She then informed me that she still wants me to fly over for the wedding day, as she will be hosting a party instead of a wedding. Everything is paid for anyways and she doesn't want anything to go to waste. I asked if they broke up. Not yet, but I'm gonna stay at my sister's place until next week. I'm assuming Matt hasn't been too great, but I'm sure I'll hear about it. Apparently my brother and my mom aren't invited. Lol. My call must have been the last straw, but as far as I am concerned Becky is handling it gracefully and Matt will be okay too, I'm sure. So I'm going to a party, but did I just make a new friend? Update 2. I picked her up in the morning and we headed to the studio. I showed her around, told her a few background stories about some of the artworks and photos that are hanging on our walls, and explained her my routine as I prepared everything. My client arrived and I handled it like I usually would, just with my mom sitting there. Lol. I explained every step of the process and she also asked me questions about my ink, needles, technique, etc. It was a lot of fun having her around and she really did surprise me with her openness and interest. When I was done with tattooing my mother had to leave for work, but thanked and hugged me for bringing her along, as she not only enjoyed spending time with me but also loved seeing me doing my job so professionally, and said that she sees my work and efforts now. To the wedding/party, the party started at 1400 hours as the ceremony was cancelled. I arrived and was immediately welcomed by Becky's sister. She hugged me and helped me with my painting. Everyone was outside, drinking and having a small bite already. I went to say hi to Becky and she hugged me warmly. She seemed tired but otherwise fine. Becky was also smiling a lot, which surprised me. I went to mingle as I didn't want to start off with questioning her. Lol. I met a lot of her friends and apparently the most of them weren't too fond of Matt. I heard a few things of how he tried to change Becky to be more like his ex and stuff like that. Not a great look, Maddie. Speaking of, not a single friend or relative of Matt was around. Besides me and one other cousin. Later as we sat down to eat, I asked if could join Becky's table. They said yes, so I was sitting with Becky, her sister and 3 of her friends. I introduced myself to one of them, haven't talked to him before, and Becky added that I'm Matt's cousin, the one who was supposed to tattoo. A simultaneous "oh" came from everyone. And with that, the conversation was about Matt from the get-go. I asked what happened. The sister just rolled her eyes and was like, what didn't? Becky and friends told me, a while ago Matt has apparently started to pick on Becky for being herself in various ways. It started small, like asking her to change her sports routine from workouts to only running. Then he criticized her cooking as he prefers to eat more meat and more traditionally. They discussed these topics and it always seemed fine, but he didn't stop. He asked her if she couldn't let her hair grow or get extensions, and speaking of hair, if she couldn't get them bright. Becky has shoulder-long black hair. More and more seemed to pile up until he also started to make comments along the line of "Can't you be more like my ex?" As I understand it, he didn't say it specifically, but it was clear he meant it like that. His ex is from Texas. I was shocked. I asked why she didn't break up because of that, but Becky explained that in the situations it didn't seem as bad as when you list those reasons. She had also made a few changes to make Maddie happy but continued to do what she wanted most of the time. Time went on and the issues resurfaced again and again in different ways. The last big fight was only a few weeks ago, when Maddie called Becky by his ex's name. They somehow settled this, so let's skip forward to when I called Becky about the tattoo idea. After our call, she went up to Matt and asked him why he didn't talk to her about it and why he would just decide doing something like that on their wedding day. He explained that he wanted to surprise her and stuff like that. Becky went on telling him this wasn't happening and that she wanted to be able to enjoy the wedding and their honeymoon. Again, they seemed to agree in the end and he apologized. But later, this almost threw me. As Becky was starting to cook dinner and Matt was sitting at the counter, they talked about tattoos again. Apparently really chill discussion about tattoos in general, and Becky asked him playfully what he intended on getting tattooed. He gestured across his chest and said, "I want my birth date, our wedding date and your birth date, so, insert is BD/06.13.2024/ insert BD/." Becky said she went blind for a millisecond. That third date was in fact not her birthday. She asked him again and he repeated the same dates. She then said that this isn't her birth date. He persisted that it was and that she should stop trying to fool him. She said she started to cry and ran to get her purse to show him her driver's license. That's when his face slipped. He tried to get out of it by making excuses that he isn't good with dates, etc., but Becky just went straight to her phone and checked Facebook. She found his ex's profile showing her birthday. It was the date he would have gotten tattooed on his chest, if I hadn't said no and also called Becky. My dumbass cousin would have ended up with the birthday of his ex-girlfriend next to his wedding date. Becky said he more or less told him it was over and that this is enough. She started to immediately reorganize the whole wedding and honeymoon while kicking him out of the house. A bit later she called me back. She also mentioned that she didn't want to say what happened on the phone as she thought I might tell my family and she really didn't want to hear about it. Fair, I get that. Becky changed the honeymoon booking and is now taking her best friend. Also, if you're wondering, Becky's dad is currently the owner of their house as they agreed to slowly pay him back, due to his financial wealth and stability that made more sense this way. As far as I know, Becky is going to stay there. Anyways, that's the tea, folks. This was truly a wild ride and I am pretty sure Becky and I are going to be good friends. We really hit it off.